Good morning and welcome to the Sugarloaf. Now that's not what this video is about, but if you are interested in the history of this place, I'll stick a link to a video I did up the top there. I explored some of these weird local places. I think this one's near the end. But, of course, knives. We have the bag. Now, knives are an important bit of kit for bushcraft, wild camping to a certain extent, and we all like the nice custom built stuff, but the prices, they're getting a bit mad. The other thing, I have got some decent knives and I'm almost reluctant to take them out sometimes. It's the worry of losing it, breaking it, whatever. It's a bit up here, but yeah, sometimes it's just nice to take a cheap one that doesn't really matter. So, what would be my choices? Let's have a dig in the old bag here. The old Hickory. Around £20, probably less, depending where you find one. Comes with a decent leather sheath. Nice traditional wooden handle. It is full tang, so it's not going to break. Although the handle's quite square, it's comfortable. Reasonable sized blade, it will do the job. They're normally shiny. I've got artificial patina on this. Just felt like a change. The downside is it's quite fine. Now that's great if you're going to use it as a cooking implement as well, because it's a really good slicer. The only real downside is if you're going to do some battening, if you're splitting wood with it. It can do it, but only up to this sort of size without trouble. Because unless you're in a scenario where you can do the one hit and it splits just like that, because it's so fine, it tends to go into the wood and get pinched. Where if you get a more bushcraft knife, shall I say, with a broader sort of profile, it pushes into the wood and opens the wood, and it's less likely to get stuck. But you can do small bits with that for kindling and so on. Something sort of completely different, but the same downfalls. The cold steel Bushman. Plastic sheath, if you prefer that sort of thing. For wet, crappy weather like we have at the moment, it's probably more suitable. Comes with a fire steel. Good retention. Bigger blade on this one. And it is sort of full tang because the handle is all one piece. It's a piece of rolled metal. The downsides of the handle, not only is it cold steel, but it tends to be a bit slippery, especially when it's wet. So I've just wrapped some electrical tape around mine. Does the job. I've given this a fair bit of abuse. It just puts up with it. For a cheap knife, can't really go wrong, apart from, again, it's quite slim. So the same caveat. You could do food prep, big food prep, but not the best of things for splitting wood. If you don't go mad on the sizes of what you're splitting, so up to this sort of size, not a problem. But don't try splitting logs in half, because it will get stuck, which is a pain. And the last one, which sadly you can no longer get, my all-time favourite, my PBK Hunter. Now I've got a fair collection of knives and I try and sort of rotate what I'm using, but probably 50% of the time, this is what I just end up taking. It's the one you always fall back on. Everyone has a favourite. And weirdly, it's also the cheapest. Not this sheath. This leather sheath is the Bushcraft store. And it's got decent fire steel and sharpener and this sort of thing in it. It's probably 5-10 times the price of the knife, but it happened to fit nicely. The PBK being a cheap knife come with a really, really cheap, horrible sheath. But what do you get? a more traditional bushcraft style and size. It's about 4.5-inch blade. Importantly, it's almost 3 mm thick. So it will split wood. It splits wood nicely. Obviously limitations of length, but it does just about everything I need it to do. Sharp spine, good with fire steel, is just perfect in design, let's put it that way. At the time when I bought this about 4 years ago, £5. I mean, that's ridiculous. If I knew how good it was going to be, how long it was going to last, I would have bought a bucket load of these and sold them on, because they're just brilliant for what they are. And I've really abused the snot out of this. And the only issue I've ever had is, I don't know how well you see on camera there's a tiny little brass infill there. That's starting to come loose, it's starting to work its way out. So I took it right out with a pair of pliers, put some, I think it was Gorilla Glue or something like that in there, hammered it back in, it's never moved since. But apart from that, it's perfect still, after 4 or 5 years of abuse. Excellent knife, for £5. It's almost disposable, isn't it? Such a shame you can't get these anymore. But the other two, although I would say not quite as good, they still do the job. Apart from being a fine blade on both, so they're not ideal for splitting wood, but hey, not everybody does that. And if you're only splitting small bits for kindling and so on, perfectly adequate. They do all the other jobs well. In fact, they're better than this when it comes to food prep, because they're so fine and slicey. But yeah, both of them, round the £20 mark. This one I think is probably even slightly cheaper. They're really good if you want a almost disposable knife, something you don't care about, something you are prepared to beat the crap out of in the woods, or if you're just starting off on a budget. These will do the job. Right, I'm going back home where it's dry and it's warm.